And I didn't say that from like a philosophical, it was like what's the point? And I remember being on the beach in North Orange County, where I'm from, and I wasn't on the beach. I was on the grass that's outside of the beach because sand is
Mhm.
icky. God spoke to me, and the way that I call it is it's like a spiritual download. It's like an epiphany. It's like a thought that's not of your own human creation. It's like, and not like a voice in your head. It's just
Mhm.
it. And God said to me, "I'm the point, Gina." And I was like, "Whoa." So he had to let me, stumble as the sheep, away from the pasture, from the shepherd and the flock. I had to, stumble off of the hillside and get badly hurt in order to be willing to be picked up by him.
Welcome to Medicine, Motherhood, and Missions, the podcast where real life meets big dreams. I'm Johanna, your host, and every episode will dive into inspiring stories from PAs, doctors, and professionals who are also dreamers and mission-driven changemakers. From the hospital halls to the hearts of our homes, and even into communities across the world, we'll laugh, learn, and uncover the challenges, triumphs, and everything in between as we see life through each other's perspectives. Looking for more joy and balance in your career? Don't miss our free guide, How to Be a Fulfilled Clinician, your quick boost of encouragement with tips to help you thrive while juggling all your hats you wear. And if you've got little dreamers at home, check out Little Evie's Big Dreams on Amazon. These stories are meant to spark imagination, courage, and kindness, perfect for bedtime or anytime. Follow along as Evie, a little Sri Lankan girl, brings joy and creativity to her community while daring to dream big. This podcast is also brought to you with love by the Ephraim Foundation International, because empowering children and families in rural Sri Lanka isn't just charity, it's continuing a legacy of hope and creating futures full of possibility. So grab your cup of coffee or tea, settle in, and get ready for uplifting conversations that will leave you inspired and equipped to make a greater impact. Let's jump in. Welcome back to Medicine, Motherhood, and Missions, the podcast where we have authentic conversations that inspire you to live with purpose in your career, your calling, your family, and your faith. Today's guest is Gina Romero, an award-winning author, speaker, podcaster, homemaking expert, and ministry leader. She's a powerhouse entrepreneur, actually. Gina holds a Master of Arts degree. She is an author of Welcome Home, a guide to homemaking from the heart, with additional books, including the Welcome Home Kitchen Cookbook, expanding her mission of equipping women to cultivate Christ-centered homes. Her writing has been featured in Guidepost, Leading Hearts, and Unison Parenting. And she also hosts the weekly Welcome Home Gina podcast, where she encourages women to embrace the beauty, purpose, and peace of Christ-centered homemaking in everyday life. Before stepping into ministry and entrepreneurship, Gina built a successful career in corporate America, working in organizational leadership. That experience gave her valuable insight into leadership, productivity, and building healthy systems. Lessons she now applies to helping women lead not only businesses, but also thriving homes. In today's conversation, we're exploring what it means to embrace timeless, biblical womanhood in a modern world. We'll discuss the Proverbs 31 women, finding your identity in Christ as a wife and mother, inviting God into ordinary moments of everyday life, and why serving your family as an act of worship can become one of the greatest ministries God has entrusted to you. We'll also talk about Gina's transition from corporate leadership to entrepreneurship, the time management and organizational principles every woman can apply, whether she's building a business or raising a family, and one of the most difficult chapters of her life, walking through a NICU journey with her premature newborn. Through that season, Gina discovered God's faithfulness in profound ways and gained a deeper understanding of surrender, perseverance, and hope. Whether you're balancing a career, building a business, raising children, or simply longing to create a home filled with peace and purpose, I know you'll leave this conversation encouraged. Please join me in welcoming Gina Romero. Thank you so much, Gina, for being here today.
Pleasure. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, it's such a wonderful thing to be able to, have this podcast and meet so many different women in so many different walks of life and But, we met at Publishing in Color conference, a writing conference that was virtual.
Yeah.
And what a beautiful connection. I'm so glad that we got to meet. And here we are today. I was on your podcast. Now you're on my podcast.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. There's so much synergy, and being a working mom is the next level. So we'll take all the help and partnership and support resources, connections we can get.
Exactly. Yeah. And even me going to the Publishing in Color conference was such a just spur of the moment decision that I had no idea it was a thing until like a week before the conference. Someone just told me about it and I was like, should I go for it? How do I attend it with my work schedule? But I just kind of made it work, and I'm so glad I did because I've been able to meet a lot of amazing people through that.
That's great. I'm so glad. Yeah. And it was awesome that it was virtual too, because then you don't have to, conferences are so expensive. I'm going to one at the time of this recording later on in the month of July, and it is expensive to get there. The only reasons why I'm going actually is because my book is up for its third award, which is amazing and totally a God thing. Awesome. And I'm speaking. If I wasn't, then I wouldn't be going because it's very expensive to get there.
Yeah. And just the time constraints, but sometimes taking those steps of faith and just, taking a step in going for that conference was
seriously
worth it in the end, just to, meet different people and just, get my mind out of just the work-life rut and just something new and different.
Yeah, and absolutely.
But before becoming an entrepreneur, you worked in corporate America and organizational leadership. Like, tell us a little bit about that, and what did that season teach you about leadership, identity, success, and how did that land you here?
Yeah, it was very interesting. I had always said that I felt very blessed to get to do what I wanted to be when I grow up. And there were a number of things. I have to start kind of at the beginning in order to, take us to where we are now, because I did in the past also have entrepreneurial ventures that didn't go anywhere, but I know now that that's because I didn't have God's favor. And at the time that I was graduating, so I'm a prodigal son completely. I had stepped away from my faith in God for 11 years of my younger life, from ages 14 to 25. And I did soul searching to figure out what I wanted to be when I grew up. But at the time that I did that, I never invited God into that process and said, hey, what do you have for me? I knew things like Jeremiah 29:11, that for I know the plans I have for you. And I knew Ephesians 2:10, the good works that I've prepared in advance for you to do. But I never invited God into my career, because my career is something that I took charge of when I was much younger. I was always industrious and productive, and I have a very low threshold for boredom.
Yeah.
I started working with like babysitting gigs at a young age, but this was back in the 90s, where the family had like one big Macintosh computer. I asked my mom to type a babysitting flyer for me. And I thought, oh, well, if I get CPR certified, I'll probably get, that's more credibility. I'll get more. And like, these were little thoughts I had as like a youngster.
Yeah.
I'll get more gigs. And so then I put up the flyer on the church bulletin board outside the kids' classrooms, and did that, and then entered the work world at 15 and a half with a worker's permit, because my parents divorced and my dad abdicated from his role of husband, father, provider, all of those things, whereas my mom had been a stay-at-home mom while she was raising us. And so I fell away from my faith for a number of different reasons and things that were going on at the time. And I just had always said, okay, I'm going to take it from here. If it's to be, it's up to me. And it was tough. It was really tough being raised by a single mom that had to figure it out and and then was like kicked to the curb, And so it's just been the past season of my life, and leaving corporate America, not even by my own choice, but as I was being laid off, the Spirit of God spoke to me and said, God is doing this. That's what it said. I'm like, whoa. And so there had been writing on the wall with this ministry and this business, Welcome Home. And I just think that now I am living in light of the good works that he's prepared in advance for us to do. So that's a little bit on, how I, kind of came to be in this position. But what was it that you wanted me to share about, like leadership and stuff like that?
Yeah, I mean, like, because how did you end up in corporate America after you were always entrepreneurial, it seems. You always had a creative mind to think
Yeah.
of new ideas.
Yeah.
And then you ended up in corporate America and
Yeah.
then you
Well, for
are now
me,
here.
it was always about the money. It was always about the money. And it can be really, really challenging to be in a for profit environment. They can really be like meat grinders. And
Mhm,
that's tough. That's really tough. And it takes
mhm,
a toll on you. And, kind of people proverbially like stepping on you to climb the ladder and ruthlessness and
yeah,
all kinds of stuff that exists
mhm,
in that kind of an environment. And also the lack of job security too. The average expected tenure of an employee went from, I think it was like 5 to 7 years to like 3 to 5 years. And so
mhm.
the world is just so much more dynamic now.
Yeah.
And it's kind of crazy making. It's difficult, especially if you're in an HR adjacent field like I was in, where like
Mhm,
with brass tacks HR, like overseeing payroll, like people have to get paid. So like those people
mhm,
aren't the first to be let go in a layoff, but there are plenty of job categories across a for-profit enterprise that are, okay, well, this is a nice to have.
yeah.
So, yeah, be talent development, training, organizational development, organizational
Mhm,
effectiveness, things like that. That's one of those ones that they look at and say, okay, well, maybe we can, move some money around. And then, what's also challenging about those environments is that the companies are not held accountable to their employees. They're held accountable to their shareholders. And so,
mhm,
one of the things that made me go into into my profession, my vocation was
mhm,
I was interning at publicly traded fashion company in downtown Los Angeles. And I was probably 20 years old. And I had come from the retail level of the organization after I graduated with an AA degree from the local community college, and then did the bachelor's degree in Los Angeles, and then did the interning because I always wanted to go corporate.
mhm.
And I saw people with 10, 15, 20 years of tenure lose their jobs, and people, in their 40s and 50s with kids and houses that had given their dedication and their loyalty to the company. And why? It was because the edict was that as profits were down, before the reports came out, every department had to cut one person. Like, that's so gross, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
So that was something that really made an impression on me. And I thought, people would do better if they knew better. And so talent
Mhm,
development and making sure that you're always doing the best that you can do for yourself and your role was something that I really wanted to get into organizations and work on. And then at the same time, on the other end of that coin is working with executives to
mhm,
develop things like patience and grace. And knowing also that there's some dark psychology that can go on too, not things like narcissism and, some pathology and things like that, which all tied into industrial and organizational psychology. So I like to think of it as like
mhm,
the intersection of people, process, and performance in business.
mhm. People, process, and performance. That's a good one.
Mhm. Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it's hard and even and you were kind of like in a healthcare kind of corporate industry as well, right? Working
No, I
for
was pretty industry agnostic. What I did
okay.
in terms of talent development would be just
Okay.
for kind of employees of any workplace.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Mhm.
Yeah, because I remember working even in hospital systems where they it's so funny because they tell you we're a family and it's
Mhm.
all about being a part
Mhm.
of a family. But then nurses would get overlooked and underpaid. And once COVID hit, then they were paying more for travel locums nurses than the nurses who had been there for
Yep.
30 years, some of them,
Right.
and they were not given the same. pay or opportunity as
Right.
someone who is just a brand new nurse doing locums travel work. And so, so much for family.
Yeah.
It was,
Because they
it's,
don't care.
yeah.
They really don't care. And I don't mean to sound so like, I've worked for a number of organizations over the course of my, over 20 years. That's not, an insignificant amount of time. And they may care, but unto a point. So maybe that's a better way of saying that they don't care. They care
Yeah.
until it doesn't serve them anymore.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. It's for profit. It's not for people.
Yeah.
Sometimes.
Yeah. Well, I know. And then with your
Yeah.
experience being in healthcare, you'd think, that it would be about people. But yeah,
Yeah.
if you want to be about people, you can work in, ministry work or nonprofit work, and, you will make
Yeah.
half of what you would make in the private sector. So it's tough. It's
Yeah.
a really tough
It's tough.
call for people to make. And I think it's also a tough call once you become a mom too. I know you have a little one. My youngest is 3.
Mhm.
And you kind of have to ask yourself, like, at a point, like, how much does the money actually matter versus quality of
Mhm.
life and things like that,
Yeah.
Yeah. If you're
Yeah.
like anxious every day going into
Mhm.
work, like, what, like, that's something to take a look
Yeah.
at. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I was talking, my husband and I were with some friends the other day, and the gentleman, the other guys in the group, they were even saying, like, sometimes time is more valuable than the money
Yeah.
they could earn spending more time at work. They themselves would rather spend time doing things that they're more passionate about or with
Right.
their families rather than,
Right.
get more money for a lack of a
Mm-hmm.
life.
Yeah.
And so I think that's across the board something that is changing, because the previous generations, they were used to working in one job for like
Right.
plus years and, just giving their, whole entire life to work
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
in order to retire at 65 and then
Mm-hmm.
end up with all these health conditions that don't let them travel or enjoy life
Right. Right.
when they could have, when they were
Yeah.
healthier or younger. And
Yeah.
so, in a way, I mean, your move and what your whole Welcome Home by Gina is kind of trying to let high achieving women learn some techniques to be able to thrive
Yeah.
better in their
Yeah.
homes, in their houses, in their families, even though they're, pursuing callings and
Right.
dreams and
Yeah,
etc.
absolutely. And I think I had shared with you before, because we had talked about the trad wife, and I remember, so I'm a Christian
Yeah.
homemaking expert, right? I remember asking you not all that long ago. I'm like, is a trad wife? Like, I feel like I've seen the hashtag, but I don't, so you had to break it down for me. But I think, my story, and I'm sticking to it, is that what matters most is that you seek God for His calling on your life, because
Mhm,
our life is about His purpose, plan, and pleasure. Stealing from Rick
mhm,
Warren, A Purpose Driven Life. And so that's the whole point. Like, it's not about us,
mhm,
it's about God. And so,
mhm,
what does He have for us to do? And then
mhm.
do it. I mean, the Proverbs 31 woman worked both inside and outside of the house. And I am sure, like, I could get a witness to all the women that are working in the home and out of the home. And I found as I did this, because I'm here because God called me to it, that,
Mhm,
but as I have become a student of my craft and learned and prayed and been guided by the Spirit and things like that, and realities have been kind of illuminated for me, something that I have discovered, because I'm also going to take a look at, this welcome home business that's, books and cookbooks and online homemaking courses and soon to be products for your tablescapes for occasions and things like that,
mhm.
and all this good news, and home economics curriculum for homeschool moms of
Oh,
middle
wow.
school and high school age girls too. So we're going to do that next year. But I look at this and I know that I'm a steward over it.
Mhm,
God owns it. God owns this
mhm,
kingdom business. And so when I think about it and apply, my rational brain and my thinking, I look at this and I say, who is the market for this? Like who needs this? And I think I can best settle that question by age and generation, which I love that you were talking about that just a moment ago. Instead of if you work in the home or you work out of the home or you work on the home or under the home or whatever you're doing on the roof of the house. If the neighbors can hear you yelling at your kids from inside. I think what it is that our generation, broad brushstrokes with the R, like if you're a mom of like relatively young kids, if you're a mom of kids under the roof, like here you go. I've got a friend that turns 50 this year and her daughter turns 5, So
Yeah, exactly.
yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Super common for career-driven women to have kids at 40, 42, 43, 45, And so, because we were raised by, again, broad brushstrokes, the baby boomers, and they were the folks that had the one job at the one company for the 30 years. They told us the best information that they had for the day and age because they were a product of their generation. And so they told us to become highly educated and get a really good paying job. And so as women, and the other one was you can be anything you want to be. And we did that. Like I was a high income earner, so over 6-figure income earner. And then in my 30s, I had the life that I had prayed for in my 20s with the husband and the kids and the cat and the house and all of that stuff. And I found myself be the homemaking expert, a little underprepared and ill-equipped for the weight of all that is required of the woman's role in it, like not in the home, but the woman's role, like in the family. And so I had to learn, like I didn't learn how to clean things. Like I didn't know how to mop a floor. Like, what do you use? Are we distilled water? What is that? Like, what is going on? Because I was raised by a single mom that went out and worked her butt off. And I went out and worked my butt off, to make ends meet and things like that.
Yeah.
So I was really good at making a paycheck, but I wasn't so good at making, like dinner or handling like these epic messes that only babies and toddlers can make. Like you guys know what I'm talking about. It is like, it's crazy. You look at some stuff that's happened and then like the dog runs through it and you're like overwhelmed. You're like, I don't think my central nervous system can handle this. Like, I don't even know where to begin,
Yeah.
So that's what I try to help women with. And I try to work as unto the Lord. And, with all of the things that I talk about, I think that there are phases and levels, and maybe that's the corporate trainer in me, because you don't have to come out of the gates or begin a project and be perfect at it or be like Martha Stewart or what have you, because of God's grace and God's goodness. Like Martha Stewart may have taught us how to do beautiful things in our homes, but she could never teach us about who we are supposed to be becoming while we do it. And when we take the emphasis off of the task, whether that's, I have to create something that looks Pinterest perfect on my 8-foot marble kitchen island in my brand new build, like I don't have that. Again, homemaking expert, and I don't have that, so it's like we have to, I guess, for lack of a better phrase, I'll use the colloquialism, if that's the right term for it, to bloom where we're planted and do the best that we can with what we have at the time. And so that could look like setting a nice table, whatever nice means to you, and lighting a candle at the table for your family for like a Saturday night dinner when you have a little more time to cook or whatever. Or maybe you get something that's been already made at the grocery store. Maybe you get takeout, but you sit down at the table as a family and you use that as an opportunity to engage, connect, disciple your children, and hopefully do it beautifully because you've been inspired by our work with Welcome Home and how we do seek to do things beautifully because we serve a beautiful God.
Yeah. I think you hit on a point that's important and that I want to emphasize a little bit more. It's not about the task and the beauty and how much we put into making things look good. It's about the connection and the connections we make with the people around us when we're setting the table for all to be, right?
Yeah.
We're creating spaces, whether that be in our work, in our community work, in our families, we're creating spaces, and it doesn't have to be some fancy space is what you're saying. It just has to be a space that we can create that is simple, inviting, and unique to what each woman has.
Yes.
That can create those connections that
Yeah.
we can help grow with our children, our husbands, families, our friends. And I think that's something that we've, overlook. And sometimes we focus on like we're working and we don't take the time to make those connections in our homes.
Yes.
Because we're so busy in a schedule, in a routine. We've got to, take them to school, then go to work, then pick them up, then take them to the next activity and pick up dinner on the way home.
Yeah.
But at least, as you said, at least once a week, how can we learn to create a space and an opportunity for a deeper connection with our families and our friends, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's biblical too. Share with the Lord's people who are in need, practice hospitality. Like I could like think of probably 7 different scriptures right now off the top of my head that talks about, hospitality. And there is so much joy to be found in serving beauty to your family. And maybe you're the kind of girl that's like mid-century modern, whereas I'm traditional. Or you're a plaid tablecloth, whereas I'm a lace tablecloth. Like none of that matters because God sees it all. He sees you hunting for the mismatched sock. He sees you shop backing out the back seat of your car and, sucking up the toys as you get the crumbs and you just don't even care anymore because you're so overstimulated. He sees all of those things. And I think that a big paradigm shift that believers can do, that Christian women can do, is to do it as unto the Lord. Because if you do it for people, it's going to fall flat every time. You're going to resent your kids. You're going to resent your husband because they're going to do things that add to your burden when you're already completely stressed out. They're going to drive you nuts when that's the last thing that you need, especially for working women. You have, let me rephrase that, especially for women that report to like a manager, a leader, because you have somebody that's putting deadlines and to-dos and that you have this whole relationship and it's like, whoa, I've got to like handle this. And then where do husbands and kids come in? It's like when they add to your stress, you're like, no. So you can really like struggle with things like patience. But when you do it for God, and it just changes everything. And it's just it's kind of like when you count your blessings, you realize that you're so much more happy and joyful because you've taken the time to do an audit, perform an inventory of, all that you have. And so it's just, and it's free to do.
Yeah. And I think, there's this term that's now building called the mental load. And I think it's something that people are bringing more awareness to because as women, whether at home or in the work or whatever, sometimes the women, they're the ones who are, in charge of a laundry list of everything, the scheduling, planning the trips, where sometimes some of them are in charge of the finances,
paying
plus
the bills,
everything else.
Yeah.
And they know all the passwords to everything, or they know all the places the kids have to go to for the rest of the week, or they also are, just, all the little things, and it is the little things that add up, just even like, where's the keys, or where can you please
where do we put this?
The things in the pantry, where is it? Like, we know it sometimes, but husbands can know it too. Some are better than others at different tasks. Everyone is different and better at different things, right? Because some women would rather have their husband take care of the finances. Some would rather be part of it. Some would rather be in charge of it. And so, everyone is better at different things, but that mental load overall. Yeah. It's like, even if we don't want to do it all, sometimes it's put on us.
Yep.
Because of the way, I hate to say it, but society, it seems like, society, but there are, cultural standards that have been placed on women
Mm-hmm.
that, a woman takes care of the kids, but husbands get away with not having that expectation. It's
Right.
the expectations.
Yeah.
Whereas, even though everything is shared sometimes in the home, but it's not
I
portrayed
want to
like
live
that.
there. I want to live there. Well, I think that maybe expectations too, but something I will say is that I have 2 kids and my 11-year-old is technically my stepson. So I had met him when he had just turned 4. So that was a very different situation for me as a mom or like a bonus mom to him than having my daughter. There was the pregnancy, the childbirth, the chemicals, the hormones, all very real stuff. And so I found almost like a biological, like not an expectation, but like a biological thing that like turned on, and she's crying and I'm up to get her. It's like I can't have my baby cry, or so
Those
I have
natural instincts that we have.
exactly.
Yeah.
And then good for us, yay, yippee skippy, we're doing that, and the diapers and all of that stuff. And I did have help because my daughter was medically fragile for a long time, but it's like, okay, now we're doing both working in the home, on the home, outside of the home, under the home.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the mental load is very real. So that's one of the reasons why I went back to the beginning and kind of shared my story, and for believers that listen to your show, because we should be beginning with the end in mind, and then teaching our daughters that yes, it's true that, praise God, you live in a free country and you can be anything that you want to be. But that doesn't mean that that's what God's plan is for you. So it's on you to discover those plans He has for you that He tells us about multiple times in Scripture. He's asking, He's waiting to, open the window of heaven and pour out the blessings on us when we are doing what He has for us. And again, wherever that may be, like, God will, put women in the mission field. He'll put them in the corporate boardroom seat. He'll put them at the bedside. He'll put them in the home. He'll put them wherever you personally are supposed to be with your unique gifts, skills, talents, because it's all got to work for His kingdom on earth. That's the whole point.
Yeah. Because recently my daughter came up to us and she's 6 years old, and she was just like, I just feel like I have a purpose in this life. I'm not sure yet, but I know I have something I need to do. And we were like, yes, you do. You have a special purpose. You're going to find it as you grow more and more, as you learn, and, as you see what your strengths are and what your unique gifts and talents are. But definitely, you are called and chosen, and you have a purpose. Each of us knows that. Each of us has that instinctual understanding of we're called to something. It's just finding out where we fit in and where our talents and strengths grow the most. As you said, the bloom where you're planted. Where are we able to put our roots down, dig deep, and really flourish?
Yeah.
Because sometimes I was talking on another podcast earlier today, actually, I had been in a very toxic work environment, and I loved the work. I never thought I would leave that hospital environment and that job because it was so comfortable. It was so easy. I loved it. I saw some growth, but I knew I was stifled because of the extra stress from the environmental stresses of the toxic work environment.
Yeah.
And once I saw a just exponential growth that I would not have had I stayed where I was.
Yes.
And so I think that goes into, we had to pray about it. We had to be like, I had to pray, God, please open another door. Show me where you want me to be and what you want me to do. And God in His mercy opened a door miraculously and allowed me to step into a different position and opened up new ways and avenues. And so it's, as people of faith in our Christian belief, we know God has doors to open that no man can shut. He calls us and he gives us opportunities where we can really bloom, where we're planted, and where we can flourish and dig our roots deep in. But yeah, it is a process. It's a journey. Like my 6-year-old daughter is going to learn as she grows up that, there's always going to be something to learn and there will be redirections and different curves in the road, but God will lead you. I mean, just like your own story, how God has led you from, starting that babysitting job out of need and out of your own love for wanting to be entrepreneurial to being in the business field and now your own business. And so,
Well, I look at it as like it's God's business and I'm the steward, like because this is not, something I think that, and that's a big difference between what I'm doing now and past ventures. Like when I was in undergrad, I started a bespoke cake making business out of my kitchen to help, pay college bills. And so I did wedding cakes and themed cakes and like cakes in the shape of a volcano with like, lava, like all kinds of stuff. And, there are just, we're called to have ears to hear, and eyes to see. And so I think that choosing to surrender my will for his, I think that that's where these opportunities like having a TV show would never never at all like, been a thing. And now I'm as of September of 2026, I'll have two on two different Christian networks and, or the podcast. It was, I can't remember if I shared this story with you or not, but the whole reason why I wrote the book was because God asked me to. It was the second time I felt God speak to me. And I say feel because I didn't hear it, but I felt God speak to me with thoughts not of my own creation. When I was leaving church of all places one day, with my husband and daughter. And so I just listened and followed and I did. And like these doors, they just flew open. Like I say that God, I'm not even from the South, but I say that God has buttered my slip and slide because these doors that flew open, I got a publisher within 10 business hours. There are people that wait 10 years to get a publisher and it just happened. And
especially in the space of homemaking, that's a difficult space because it's so many people.
Yeah, I never had a day of writer's block. I didn't want to do the podcast. And then I said, okay, I'll do the podcast. And then God said this would be a ministry. And then it went number 19 on Apple Podcasts in China after like 5 weeks. So like all of this stuff, and then the book wins awards, and then I get a contract for a second book. And so it's like all this stuff that like you can try it. Like there's a Bible verse that I love in Psalms, unless the Lord builds the house, the laborers toil in vain. And that is as a kingdom CEO, that's my guiding scripture because he's got to do it. I'm just the vessel.
Yeah, it's so true. And I love how, your journey, it's just reminiscence of just how God's faithfulness through it all, because you have faced difficulties with your little one, as you mentioned, having to be in the NICU.
Yeah. I feel like I got a medical degree.
Yeah.
I say that with all respect, but yeah, it was very real.
Yeah. And because I know you explained a little bit more about how much she had to go through and to me before and layoffs, but God directs. God's faithfulness is ever present. And because we seek him and we seek his kingdom first. But what kind of encouragement would you want to leave women out there who are listening? Maybe those who are, because we mentioned talking about the guilt, the burden, the fear, the mental load, exhaustion. Like, how would you encourage women in that space right now?
Absolutely. Don't try to do it all by your own strength. You can do it all, but you have to call on the Lord. And Jesus talks about it. I think, I know it's recorded in the book of Matthew, but he says, cast your cares on me, for my yoke is light. And we get so burdened by everything that has to happen and all of the to-do lists and just all that is called of us. I would say, don't try to do it on your own strength. Don't try to carry it all on your own, because you're not meant to. And you could be free as a breeze. You could be, a grandma with an empty nester, or you could be an empty nester and not yet have grandkids, and you're like, woohoo, life is good. But no matter what, when you live your day, when you live your daily life, you have to, lean on, you got to walk by faith and not by sight.
Yeah. And how do you separate your worth from your productivity?
Oh, yeah. So that productivity can become an idol for me. I know this of myself. So that's a big thing. I have clung to the Lord and sought the Lord and spent time with the Lord to develop my identity in Christ, so that I not only know who I am, but I know whose I am. And so it's a false god, and it'll make you feel good in the moment. And that's how idols work. Like, I always thought of, like, I don't know if you remember the Charlton Heston movie, The 10 Commandments, that came out in the 60s or something. Yeah. I would watch that movie as a kid.
All watched it.
Yeah. Growing up, you only had like 5 channels. So,
and those 2 movies.
Yeah, those 2 movies, exactly. And, I was like, I'd never worship, clutching my pearls, I never worship a false god like the, golden calf. But we create these false gods because it feels good in the moment to be so productive. We actually get a dopamine hit when we check off the box of our to-do list. But the way that idols work, and the reason why God says not to do it and to guard your heart and mind, is because it's always a false promise. It'll leave you strung out at the end of it, instead of finding your purpose and your worth and who you are as a child of the King and seeking to do his will. Because again, it's not about you, So that's probably the best advice I'd have there.
Yeah. And just going back to your initial comments of, how did you get back to knowing Christ? And because, you were from a young age working, and then kind of lost your father. And how did you get back to, being so faithful in Christ now?
So when I said I'm like the prodigal son from that parable, it's true, but only in the sense that God came to me. God came to find me. And so there's a scripture and a song that he leaves the 99 sheep to go after one. Because we have to understand the original audience and context in which the Bible was written. It was the ancient world. It was Israel. It was agrarian, Israel and the surrounding areas, and so many people were shepherds and shepherdesses as a profession. And so, you have to look at what their role was, and one of the things was to protect the sheep. And so if one went trotting off down, a dangerous path or a ledge on a hillside, the shepherd had to go after and get that one. And so that's what God did with me. It was through a health crisis that he called me back to him. And I remember at the time I was 25 years old. I wasn't working. It was just a short period of time, but I had been working, then did something entrepreneurial. Then that kind of went to a slow because I herniated a disc out of my spinal column. So L5S1, lost the ability to walk, had a surgery for it after a long time of just pain and anguish and things like that. And I remember, I didn't have a significant other, I didn't know what I was doing, dating wise. And I just was at the lowest low. And I remember just thinking what, it was hopeless. I felt hopeless. What is the point? And I didn't say that from a philosophical, it was almost a suicidal, what's the point? And I remember being on the beach in North Orange County, where I'm from, and I wasn't on the beach. I was on the grass that's outside of the beach because sand is icky. God spoke to me, and the way that I call it is it's like a spiritual download. It's like it's like an epiphany. It's like a thought that's not of your own human creation. It's like, and not like a voice in your head. It's just it, and God said to me, I'm the point, Gina. And I was like, whoa. So he had to let me, stumble as the sheep, away from the pasture, from the shepherd and the flock. I had to, stumble off of the hillside and get badly hurt in order to be willing to be picked up by him. But because I had been saved, this is my, my story, my testimony, pardon me, because I had been saved and confirmed it, in self-elected baptism as a young child, like maybe 11 or 12 years old. I was his. My name was written in the book of life. I was God's child. I had signed over my soul to my King and Creator and accepted Christ as my Savior, as the only way to him. And so he loved me so much that he went after me, and spoke to me, and that changed it all for me.
Yeah. It's interesting because sometimes in our deepest pain and difficulties, we can choose either to run to God or run away from God.
Yeah.
And sometimes, like you had that prior understanding of faith as a child, which drew you back to him.
I've done both. I've run from God and run to God. In times of desperation. Yeah.
And it's something that's human nature to either one or the other, but hopefully we can keep running back to him and to know that he does care for us and has a plan and purpose for our lives and good things and a good future as well.
Yeah, he promises it.
Yeah. And so thank you so much, Gina. Do you have any last words of encouragement or information or anything that you wanted to share?
No, just I would say, you matter and you are enough and you are, just we're all in the same boat. And so take things one day at a time. And God loves you. And so if anyone wants to follow along on Instagram, I'm Welcome Home by Gina, and Facebook as well. And then welcomehomebygina.com.
That's awesome. And I'll have all the links in the show notes. And you can find Gina on so many platforms because she has all of them. And now TV too. So you can see her too. But thank you so much, Gina, again. Thank you all for listening. I hope this conversation reminded you that our greatest ministry is often found in the ordinary moment. Whether you're caring for patients, leading a team, building a business, raising children, or simply trying to be faithful in the season God has you in, your work matters. Your home matters. Your calling matters. And when we invite God into everyday moments, he transforms the ordinary into something eternal. A heartfelt thank you to Gina Romero for sharing her wisdom, vulnerability, and encouragement with us today. If this episode encouraged you, would you take a moment to subscribe, leave a review, and share it with a friend who could use this reminder? It helps us more when women discover these conversations and become part of our growing community. And if you're looking for more encouragement, practical resources to help you thrive in medicine, motherhood, and your God-given missions, be sure to visit Medicine Motherhood Missions Community. Until next time, remember, your work has purpose, your family has purpose, your life has purpose. Keep leading with excellence, loving with compassion, and wherever God has called you, continue to spark hope. Thank you so much, guys. Thank you for joining us in this episode of Medicine, Motherhood, and Missions. We hope you found inspiration, insight, and a sense of connection in the stories we shared today. If you enjoyed today's episode, be sure to subscribe and leave us a review. Your feedback helps us reach more listeners like you. Follow us on Instagram for updates, free downloads, and to join a community of like-minded individuals passionate about making a difference through medicine, motherhood, and mission work. Remember, you're not alone in this journey. Until next time, keep sparking hope, keep healing, keep nurturing, and keep making a difference. This is Johanna signing off from Medicine, Motherhood, and Missions. The medical opinions expressed on this podcast are for informational purposes only and should not be considered as medical advice. Always consult a licensed healthcare provider for personal medical concerns or questions. The views expressed by guests are their own and do not necessarily reflect those of the podcast host.